This is a real privilege for me, both professionally and personally. Fred Kaufman, for those that don't know, studied economics at Berkeley before becoming a professor of accounting at MIT. He was a researcher while at MIT in organizational learning, where he started working with companies on how they could develop best practices with regard to management, leadership, the development of culture. And that led to him starting his own company, Axialent, which became really world-renowned in that discipline. Fred is one of the best coaches in the world when it comes to taking organizations, helping them identify what makes them tick, their culture, their values, how they can take their leadership to the next level. And while at Axialent, he had the chance to author a book, which some of you may be sitting on. Hopefully by now you've picked it up. Conscious Business, which is, along with The Art of Happiness, which wasn't necessarily oriented towards management. The Art of Happiness is about the teachings of the Dalai Lama. But those are the two most influential books I've read when it comes to thinking about leadership, when it comes to thinking about organizational culture. And for me personally, Fred has grown over the last 7 or 8 years that I've known him to be a dear friend and a mentor in the truest sense of the word. He is someone that whenever I'm asked about my influences in my career, I rank him easily among the most influential people I've ever known. This introduction, in a sense, Fred, I was thinking about this before I got up here, is 5 years in the making, and let me explain what I mean by that. It was 5 years ago, almost to the day, believe it or not, that Fred and I had a series of dinners, and as Fred is wont to do, he was incredibly influential during this period. I had just left Yale. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And over the course of a number of discussions, settled upon kind of a personal vision statement, which was to expand the world's collective wisdom and compassion. And it was profound, and it's a vision, so it's a dream. And as I was thinking about how to ultimately manifest it, I was sharing ideas with Fred, and we were doing a little bit of brainstorming, and ultimately the conclusion was interesting. It wasn't necessarily about developing products or services that would offer wisdom and compassion. We believe that might prove to be almost prohibitively challenging. But we did conclude that by working within an organization, leading within an organization, recruiting people, onboarding people, developing people, and developing a culture oriented around the sharing and expansion of collective wisdom and compassion within that company, you could manifest wisdom and compassion in whatever products or services that company offered. And in doing so, change the lives of anyone that company ultimately touched. And so you fast forward 5 years later, and here I am, and here Fred is. And for those that don't know, Fred has been sharing a lot of his knowledge and his experience and his expertise across the company, starting with my directs and our leadership team, and then their directs. And with today, we wanted to kick off a process where Fred could take all of his collective experience and share it across LinkedIn. And so we're hoping that this is just the beginning, and we're going to be seeing a lot more of Fred over the next weeks and months and even years to come, which I'm overjoyed about. And with that, I would like to turn it over to one of the most wise and compassionate people I know, Fred Kaufman.
Some questions can change your life, and here's a question that changed my life. I just got my first job. I was a teacher at MIT, and I started traveling around the country to learn about management. When I interviewed with MIT, I had a degree in theoretical economics. So the dean asked me, well, would you come and teach accounting? And I said, well, I don't know any accounting. I said, well, you don't have to know it, you just have to teach it. So I asked him, well, how much do you pay? And he told me, and it was twice as much as the professors of economics. So I think accounting is hazardous to your health, so they pay you extra to teach that. So I said, okay, but I need to learn. So he said, okay, we'll teach you. We'll let you study accounting, we'll give you a year, study, do like a mini MBA, go around the country, talk to people in companies. It was a luxury education. I'm thankful for the rest of my life. So I took one of these planes out of Boston, and this guy sits next to me, and he asked me, so what's your job? You know, typical thing people ask when they sit on a plane. And this question, like one of these seeds, stayed in my mind until today. And it has grown. And as it grows, I don't know if you've ever seen a mountain that you have these rocks, and then there are these little shrubs that come out of the rock, and they break the rocks. The roots are so powerful that they just crack the rocks around it. And this question, over 30 years, has lodged here in my mind, and it has lately just broken my life. It really has just shocked me to no end. So I want to share this question with you, and hopefully in 20 years you'll still be blaming me for ruining your lives too with it. But I like to imagine you just sat on a plane today, now, and you know the person next to you, you don't know them, and they just turn to you and they say, what's your job? What would you say? In one sentence, what's your job? So please tell the person next to you. If you're remote and you're alone, just think about it. But if you're here, really, literally, this is like you just sat on a plane, the person next to you asks you, what's your job? What do you tell them? Go ahead, 5 seconds. Go, tell them, what's your job? Okay, please pay attention. I have some security announcements. This is how you click your seat belt and all, you know, for those of you who don't know how to do it. Okay. So now comes the interesting part. I told the person I'm a teacher. What did you tell the person next to you? I'm going to bet you $100 that in 3 minutes you change your mind. How about that? How many people would take that bet? In 3 minutes, you will change. This is not for people that have heard me say this before, but I can recognize some faces. They raise their hand. Like, I know the answer. No, come on. I mean, do you know what your job is? How sure are you that you know what your job is? I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong. You're going to tell yourself you're wrong. How about that? $100. Would you bet? Yes. Most people say, okay, very good. So in the next 60 minutes that we're together, I hope to prove to you that the way you define your job, what your job is not what you think it is. Now, you'll think about it differently. Not only once, I'll do this twice. I'll bet you, I'll give you an answer, you say, yeah, okay, now I understand, and then I'll bet you again, and you'll be surprised again. Then I'll tell you why this is almost impossible for people to comprehend, and why it's so amazing that we are together here, and I consider myself, as Jeff said, one of you, because we have an opportunity to imprint this question in the collective consciousness, and I think it's one of those questions that will change the world. And then how to get that done, because it's incredibly difficult. So that's my goal, to share with you some ideas, but essentially what I say is not going to be relevant. What you learn is what matters. So let's start with the what. And I love this quote from Alice. Would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go from here? And the cat says, well, that depends a good deal on where you want to go. Well, I don't much care where, so the cat says, then it doesn't much matter which way you go. Why is this relevant? Because my job is not being a teacher. My job is to help people learn. See, what's the goal? Most people define their jobs by what they do. I don't know if you did this. But your job is not what you do. Your job is the goal you pursue. If you ask me, what am I doing now? I could say, well, I'm teaching. So this is a verb about what I do. Now, for us Argentinians, that's a very pleasant thing to do. Everybody knows Argentinians are the smartest and the humblest people in the world. So, you know, it feels really natural to say, why are all these people there? Because of me. I'm teaching, so it's me. Now, I've noticed that a lot of North Americans are becoming Argentinians in spirit too. And it's kind of me. So my job is what I do. but really your job is not about yourself. And your company is not about you as employees. It's what is the goal you pursue? What is the goal I pursue? So notice how different it is to say my job is to teach than to say my job is to help my students learn. So let me just get a quick show of hands. How many people define their jobs? Now, this is not to embarrass anybody. It's for us to see what's the case. How many people define their jobs essentially as what you do? Okay. Do you agree that it's a more expansive definition to start thinking of your job as the goal you pursue, as trying to accomplish something? And then what you do becomes subservient. It's a means to an end, but then you have a lot more possibilities. So if someone says, what's your job? Well, I drive people. I'm a driver. I'm a taxi driver. Well, one thing is to drive people. The other job definition is I help people get to where they want to go. That's a completely different definition. As a coach, that's a different kind of taxi driver, but it's also a very powerful definition. I coach people versus I help people get to where they want to go. It's very different. So if I ask you now, what is your job? How would you think about it? Now I'm going to bet you another $100 that in 3 minutes I make you change your mind again. How about that? How many people would take that bet? Don't tell me, it's okay. So this was that was the first revolution in my mind when I realized my job is not what I do, but it's the goal I pursue. And I started asking people, what's your job? And I started seeing how much opportunity is out there in the world by helping people think differently about their goals, their life dreams, their mission, and then design their life based on the mission that they're pursuing, as opposed to just activities. But this one was even bigger. This one was, I would bet $1,000 that 1 in a million people thinks like this. And now think of your job at LinkedIn. And let me take you out and put you in a soccer game. Argentinians, we need to bolster our self-esteem. Soccer is one of the few ways in which we can feel proud of ourselves. So what's the goal in soccer? I mean, well, this is not a trick question. I mean, now people are afraid. I'm not going to bet you anything. It's okay. No bets. What's the goal in soccer? It's to win. To win. To win. You want to win. You play a sport, you want to win. So you want to win, you want to get the cup. Now, what's the job? This is the key question. What's the most important job? What's the primary job of every member of a soccer team? What is the job of every soccer player? To help the team win. Let me say it again. The job of every soccer player is not their goal. They have to subordinate to the team in order to win. Let me put this again. They have subordinate their individual goal to the goal of the team in order to win. No individual player wins the game, not in soccer. The team wins or loses together. It cannot be the case that if we're in the same team, I win and you lose. We do it together. So would you agree that the job of every soccer player is to help the team win? Is that fair? Would you agree? Now, you ask most players, if I tell you, oh, I'm a goalie, what's your job? What would you say is my job if I tell you I'm a goalie? I mean, the typical person, what would they say? Stop the ball. Is that my primary job? What's my real job? Help the team win. If I'm a defender, what's my job? Help the team win. If I'm an attacker, what's my job? Score goals? This is a trick question. I'm letting you know. What's my job? If I'm an attacker, I'm Maradona. What's the most important thing Maradona can do? Score goals? No. Help the team win. If we are winning 1-0 and there's 5 minutes left, and the coach says, go back and help defend the goal because we're winning. Imagine an attacker saying, no, that's not my job. My job is to attack and score goals. I'm not going to go back. Do you want a player like that in your team? I wouldn't. As a coach, I don't want to play. I want everybody committed to help the team win. That is the primary job of every player. It's not the goal of your position. It's the goal of the team that is superior to the goal of your position. Do you agree with this so far? What's the goal of every member of a company? What's their job? What's the primary job of every person in a company? Help the team win. Help the company win. This is not a trick question. I gave you the answer. This is the only job. This is the only job that makes a difference. Now, the way you do this job may be attacking, defending, IT, security, whatever, finance, accounting, marketing, sales. But those things are not your job. What's your only job? Help the company win. Let me just check. How many people said, my job is to help my company win? Okay. I would say, I'll assume the same proportion of the people that are off-site, so I guess you owe me about $1 million. How does LinkedIn win? And this is what I love of the conversation I had with Jeff 5 years ago, and it's still resonating in my mind, is by creating economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. That's the only job. That's the first job. It's the only job. Everything else is to do that, and to do it profitably, sustainably, ethically. But this is how you win. This is if we were playing soccer, this is the scoreboard. Are we doing this? And it completely changes the way you think about your job. If you start thinking, how does this action go all the way out to help create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce? Suddenly, even programming or preparing coffee or anything could be, how can this help every member of the global workforce have a better life through economic opportunity? And it radically changes. I'm proud to be here because I hope that the conversation we have today will help every member of the global workforce. It may sound a little grandiose, but it's not grandiose. It's a small, I know it's a very small contribution, but that's what we're all doing every day. You are doing this. I feel proud to be with you doing this together. It's a completely different way to think about my job. Now, that's the good news. I hope you feel inspired by this, because now I'm going to turn on the cold water. Doing your job may be hazardous to your career. I have to warn you this. This is a very serious problem. In fact, this is why I left MIT. I researched this problem for 10 years. I couldn't find an answer. And I even couldn't prove that there's no answer. I mean, it's a horrible problem. There's no solution. And here's the key problem. For those of you who are engineers, you'll understand the unfortunate non-linearity of the world. It would be so much easier if the world was linear. But in a non-linear system, in order to optimize the system, you have to sub-optimize the subsystems. That's a mathematical truth. This is not, well, in some companies, yes. This is just the way it is, unfortunately. In order to optimize the system, you have to subordinate the subsystems. Well, so far, so good. What's the problem? You just do it. Well, the problem is that in every company, people get measured and compensated by the performance of their subsystems. So let's just say, let me go back to soccer. Let me get for. So how do you win in soccer? Not scoring goals. This is why the U.S. is so, we Argentinians know something you don't. I mean, you may have 500 times our GDP, but we know soccer better. How do you win? You have to score more goals than the opponent. You have to do both. I mean, you can score 100 goals. If your opponent scores 101, you lose. So now, let's just say I'm a management by objectives kind of guy. Okay, I studied Harvard, that horrible place on the other side of the river. The people that don't get into MIT end up going to Harvard, and the business school at worst. So I'm coming here. Hey, I'm the big coach. I'm going to organize this soccer team. We want to pay for performance. We don't want people slacking off. We're going to do management by objectives. If you're a defender, your job is to defend. So I'm going to pay you in inverse proportion to the number of goals you allow. I mean, that seems reasonable. No, the more goals that people score against you, the worse your performance. And if you're an attacker, if you're in the offense, I'll pay you according to how many goals you score. Pretty simple problem, you'd say. I mean, this is the simplest organization, 2 subsystems, the simplest optimizing problem you can ever have. Now, what do you prefer if you're a defender? You prefer to win 5-4, or do you prefer to win 0-1? Where are you going to get the biggest bonus? To lose 0-1, sorry. This is not a trick question. What's the highest bonus? 0-1. I mean, this is shocking. The simplest problem, 2 subsystems, linear everywhere, the simplest incentive system, and I already have half of the team preferring to lose. No, this is very serious. Multiply this by 1,000,000 and you have a company. This is what happens. I mean, have you ever had a problem in LinkedIn where you say, well, but these guys are not really, I mean, they're not thinking with the company's hat. I mean, they're putting their functional hat and they're trying to get the best for themselves. Of course, you would never do that. I know it's not you, never the people in this room, but all those people who didn't come to the talk, they always do this thing. That's why they didn't come, because they don't care. Now, the same thing would happen with the offense. You'd rather lose 4-5 than win 1-0. Why? Because you're being paid on how you score, not what happens to the team. Now, I don't know if LinkedIn has pay for performance, but I imagine every company does. So commission, for example, if you have sales commission, this is the same. You ask the operations, like Henry Ford would say, they can have any color as long as it's black. Why? Because black is cheap, so we can have everything black. And you ask the salespeople and say, let's have a rainbow, because people like cars with 7 different colors, one after the other. But it's outrageous. It costs 5 times more than we can charge. Well, I don't care how much it costs. I get paid by revenue. I don't get paid by profit. This is exactly the same thing. Now, every organization in the world has this problem. It's the most intractable and the most difficult problem. And what I want to tell you is that this problem is also what brought down the wall in Germany. The communist economies have this problem in droves, and they're unsustainable because of that. So it's not just a business problem. This is a really profound economics problem about the management of incentives. And I'll connect this with that, and I'll share with you some wise words of a Nobel laureate. But here's the problem in a more abstract manner. If you provide global incentives, what you're doing is you're creating one team. And everybody, there's no company in the world that I've ever worked. I've worked all over the world, Indonesia, Australia, England, Germany, the US, of course, Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, Chile. Every company in the world, every company has ever, I ever walk in, the first thing I say, we need to improve cooperation. We have silos. We just, we need to work better together. Now, why do they have silos? Well, it would be better to pay just the team wins and loses together. Just give them global incentives. The team wins, everybody gets a bonus. The team doesn't win, nobody gets a bonus. Don't separate them in sub-teams. What's the problem with that? Well, it turns out there's a lot of problems with that. The first, I mean, of course, what's the good part of that? You get alignment, you get cooperation, because everybody's pursuing the same goal, and you get risk pooling. This is a little more technical, but because everybody works together, if you have random shocks, people like insurance, okay? So instead of having, you have a good outcome or a bad outcome, you can average across the board, and everybody likes that. This is a part of human nature based on, well, it's based on something that's called decreasing marginal utility. But believe me, this is the case. It's another logical fact about how human beings are. We prefer certain outcomes to risky outcomes when it's big enough. But what are the problems? The first is it's very hard to evaluate what's going on because it's very complex. When you partition a system, well, it's much easier to manage it. But then more important than that, you get moral hazard. This system is vulnerable to predators. So if somebody walks in and says, hey, imagine everybody gets 1/4,000th of the profits, the bonus pool of LinkedIn, and everybody gets that. Or, I mean, let's just say that. What's the best case scenario? Well, let's just say you have one of these free riders. It's like, well, 3,999 people work really, really hard, and just one person goes fishing. That's not going to make much difference on the bonus pool. So I get to go fishing, and I get the bonus. What's the problem of that logic? Exactly, it's never just one person. If other people start seeing me go fishing, then why am I working my ass off if this person is fishing? I'm going to go too. And then you end up like the Soviet Union, where they had this deal. They pretend like they pay us, and we pretend like we work. It's a good deal. But then there's something worse. Let's just say you are a bottom feeder. You're a bad performer. Well, you want to go a place where the average will lift you. So you're going to attract the worst people, because the worst people would like a payment system where everybody gets average, because they know they're below. They're at the bottom tail of the distribution. And if you are a great performer, do you want to be averaged? No, because you know your average is going to bring you down. So if you're above average, you don't want to work in a place like that. If you're below average, you want to, that's exactly the wrong incentive. You don't want to attract the worst people and expel the good ones. So everybody says, yeah, we should all be together. But the moment you put a global incentive system, you screw up the company, because you create incentives for predation and you attract the wrong people and expel the right people. So it's not that easy. Now, I'm sorry. So now you have, well, let's do local incentives. But I mean, of course, you get excellence. People are focused, you have accountability, and you attract the right people. You're going to keep your tips. So if you're a waiter, you want to work in a place where, if you're a good waiter and you get big tips, you don't want to average your tips. You want to keep them. But what's the problem? First is, I don't give a damn about any other table, because my tables are my tips. So if those guys are starving to death and the waiter is not taking care of them, that's too bad for them. They sat at the wrong table. Next time, sit at my table. If you're an extraordinary salesperson, why would you ever train another salesperson? I mean, they're your competitor. It's like you're happy when they fail. That's sub-optimization. And also, everybody has to bear the risk. So this is the silos. Every company has silos. Why does every company have silos? Because they have local incentive systems. Why do they have local incentive systems? Because if you have global incentive systems, it's worse. So this is kind of like bad news, worse news. What the hell do you do? I mean, really, this is an extraordinarily difficult problem. And just to quote Friedrich Hayek, one of my heroes, a Nobel laureate, the economic problem of an organization is rapid adaptation to changes in its particular circumstances. Then, the ultimate decisions must be left to the people who are familiar with these circumstances, who know directly of the relevant changes and of the resources available to meet them. This problem cannot be solved by first communicating all this knowledge to a central board, which then issues its orders. Hayek is participating in something that was called the calculation debate. It went in economics between the Austrian school. Hayek was an Austrian. Ludwig von Mises was another Austrian. Ava Lerner, which actually was given the Nobel Prize with Hayek, and Oskar Lange were the communists. And the communists said, it's possible to calculate how to run an economy with a central board. And this is how they did it in the Soviet Union. Hayek and Mises says, no, if you don't have markets, the economy will collapse. In 1920, Mises predicted that the Soviet or any communist economy would collapse, because without capital markets, there was no way to allocate resources rationally. So this is a debate that took 80 years. I mean, essentially with the fall of the Berlin Wall and the Chinese embracing some sort of capitalism. It's their own breed. It's kind of a centrally controlled capitalism, but it's still far away from what Mao wanted. That debate is finished. I mean, you can see North Korea, Cuba, there are a few countries in the world, but very few countries that still embrace the communist principle that you can run a central economy. Well, the same thing happens in a company. You cannot run a central company. That's what he's saying. So this would say, decentralize. Allow people to do what they do best, and so on and so forth. Now, there's only one problem, and as he says, but the man on the spot cannot decide solely on the basis of his limited but intimate knowledge of his immediate surroundings. There still remains the problem of communicating to him such further information as he needs to fit his decisions into the whole pattern of changes of the larger organizational system. So this says, don't decentralize. I mean, imagine if you're a war, and you tell, okay, every soldier knows exactly what's happening in his surrounding area. So the soldier can decide, what do I do now? But then if you have 10,000 soldiers, each one of them going in their own direction, and say, oh no, I can't go forward because there's a lot of enemies forward, so I much rather go sideways, but the other people are coming the other. It's a mess. You need a strategy for everybody together. You cannot allow people to emerge with a strategy. It doesn't happen. This is an incredibly difficult problem. I'm going to say this is an impossible problem. So this is the depressing news. So now comes the good news. Two hikers are in the woods, and then they find the bear. Blah! The bear is just coming towards them. They're shocked, and one of them sits down, gets his running shoes, and starts untying his boots. And the other says, what the hell are you doing? So I'm going to run. You can't outrun the bear. I don't have to. I only have to outrun you. This is the good news. You don't have to outrun the problem. You cannot solve this problem. You only have to do it better than your competitors. Everybody has this problem. Everybody is ruined by this problem. If you only suck at it a little less than everybody else, you'll be the best in the world. I mean, I'm serious. People suck at this to no end. Companies are horrible. I told you, every company I know is struggling with this issue. Why is this so? Because people don't know what their job is. People think their job is to attack. People think their job is to defend. That's not your job. Your job is to help the company win and create economic opportunity for everybody. But that's really hard because all the systems are going to delude you. This is like a matrix. Every time you look at an incentive system, every time you look at a performance measurement system, it's going to delude you into thinking your job is to get the metric. The metric is, there's a reason for it, and I could explain more, but I just wanted to give you the flavor. So now you feel like, oh my God, what am I going to do? How do I outrun the bear? What do I do in a situation like this? And I'm going to tell you how. And it starts with a change in mind about these incentive systems and your job. Because most people feel like they're prisoners of the incentive system. So let me give you another pop quiz. So look, okay, this is my prop. Okay, look, it's an experiment. So everybody can see the apple fall. Now why? Please play with me. Just what's the first thing that comes to mind? What's the apple fall? Gravity, great. I knew you would say that. I didn't bet you, okay? I don't want to trick you. Okay, we have an alternative hypothesis. Someone says, because I let it go. Do you agree with that too? Yeah. So here's a problem. We have two causes, but only one slot for an explanation. Because the first thing that comes to mind, one thing. So truth is not enough of a filter, because you get two truths. Truth is, it's gravity and I let it go. So why would you choose one or the other? But you have to choose one, okay? You have, your stack only allows for one answer. Which one are you going to put first? Well, I'll tell you the logic for the answer is that everything that happens in the world, everything, you can divide in two vectors. There's a set of causes that are within your control and a set of causes that are out of your control. That's always true. Anything that happens you can explain with these two vectors of variables. The question is, which one would you choose? Now, for those people that think that it's gravity, and they choose gravity, and they only think of gravity, this is a miracle. What's the miracle? Well, I mean, gravity is there and it's not falling. How could that be? Gravity is what makes the apple fall. Now, of course, if you say let it go, that gives you operational power. The choice of the variable gives you tremendous operational power. But to get the power, you have to choose the variable that's in your control. If you choose gravity, you're doomed. You can't stop gravity. So if someone said, I don't want it to fall, so I can't, sorry, on Earth, I can't do this. But if you have the explanation in control, you say, of course, I don't let it go, it doesn't fall. Are we together? Why would anybody be so stupid as to choose an explanation that disempowers them? I mean, it sounds ridiculous, no? Have you ever been late to a meeting? Have you ever been in a meeting where someone else is late? I know, you're never late. The people that are not here are the ones that come, they're late here, they're late to the meetings. Now, you ask a person, why are you late? What's the typical answer? What do people say? I was stuck in another meeting. Another typical one? Traffic. Have you heard these ones? I was stuck in another meeting, I was in traffic. What kind of vector of variables is that? Is it in control or out of control? Can you control traffic? Can you control the other meeting? No. What can you control? What time you leave, and you can control whether you stay in the meeting or you leave the meeting. That's up to you. But nobody says, sorry, I am late because I chose to stay in the other meeting when it went over. I mean, that's the real answer. People say, I was stuck in the meeting. The meeting grabbed me. I just, let go, let go. No, yeah, it wouldn't let go. I thought I saw a bar here that's like The Office. It's called The Office. I don't know, Highway 101. So it's like, honey, sorry, I'm stuck at the office. When did you wake up? But very few people say, oh, I overslept. So this is the payoff. It's like, why would you choose these variables out of control? Because they make me innocent. It wasn't me, it was the meeting. The price of innocence is impotence. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You know, this was supposed to be a fun morning. I know. I had to ruin it. I'm so sorry. I hear the cries, you know, the moaning, but you know, that's me. That's what I enjoy doing. I like breaking people's hearts. This is what I call the philosophy of the victim. A victim is a person, now victimhood is not a moral injunction. Victim is a person that privileges explanations with exogenous factors. That's what a victim is. Whenever something goes wrong, you choose an explanation that will focus on factors that are out of your control. Here's the counterface. The price of power is responsibility. But not responsibility in the normal way. You're not responsible for what happens. These people are not responsible for the escalator stopping. But they are what I would call players. They can do something about it. And this is a sense of, the player is the sense of ability to respond. I am not stuck because the escalator stopped. I am stuck because I don't know what to do when the escalator stops. It's what do you do when? That's ability to respond. Responsibility, understood as ability to respond. That's the philosophy of the player. It's what can I do? Now, it's very hard to be a player because we're all stuck in the victim philosophy that we learn when we're kids. As I was saying, you know, my kids never came to say, Daddy, Daddy, I broke the toy. If you have kids, have you ever heard your kids say that? No. What do they say? It broke. It broke. So I'm glad in the US they also make suicidal toys. The harakiri type of toys. You know, they break, and I say, where were you when it broke? Well, I wasn't there. I wasn't there. It broke. And what about the milk? It spilled. Notice the very precise use of language. There's no subject in this sentence. There's no it. It's the universe made it spill. I mean, this is the kind. For those of you who know Advaita, this is kind of an Advaita way to look at the world. Things happen. Just the universe happened. And why did you hit your sister? She made me do it. She made me do it. I mean, this is perfect. I didn't do it. She hit herself through me. She made me. Now, these people grow up, and then they work here with you. It's, sorry, the project got delayed. It got delayed. It's the same language. Have you ever heard that? It got delayed. You know, we're trying to pull it out, but it doesn't want to come out. Or the file got lost. I don't know. It took the wrong turn in the network. We can't find it. It's too difficult. What does it mean it's too difficult? I don't know what about it. That's what it means. I don't know how to do it. But very few people say, I don't know how to do it. They say, it's too difficult. And of course, when there's a fight, it's your fault. Now, think of something bad that happened to you. And I'm going to tell you how to ruin your life. This is how you ruin your life. When something bad happens to you, ask yourself these questions. I'm putting them up there. I'll share the presentation with everybody afterwards. I mean, it'll be posted. But these are the questions that will ruin your life and will do in the life of everybody around you. So I'm putting them here so you never ask them again. What did he do wrong? Why did he do it? What should he have done? What should he do now to fix it? So but this is what makes you friends with people. You go home, your wife or your husband says, oh, I had a horrible day, and you click into these questions because you want to be nice. This is a drug. It looks friendly, but your drug dealer is not your friend. And if you deal drugs, you're not friends with people. This is what gets people stuck. These questions are really a drug because they make you feel like a victim. They give you the self-righteous indignation of the victim, but they disempower you completely. The idea is that everything that happens in your life Every result is the combination of the challenge versus your responsibility. What do you do when? So what do you do when the incentive systems are blinding you? What do you do when it seems like your job is to just do your job? That's the key question. Are you moved by a vision, by an aspiration that's larger than the incentive system? Or are you going to blame the incentive system for doing what you know is not the right thing? If you do not feel part of the problem, you cannot be part of the solution. That's the essential philosophy of the player. Everything that happens because I'm around. I have to do with it. I contribute to it. And the question is, what can I do to respond to this situation? Even though I didn't create it, I'm going to respond to it. So these are the questions that are going to, probably finish a lot of your friendships. So don't ask them either. I mean, I'm not teaching you how to ask these questions. It takes a little more preparation. But these are the questions that any good coach will ask his or her clients. How did you contribute to create the problem? And people say, I didn't do anything. Well, precisely. How was that a part of creating the problem? You doing nothing. What can you do now? And I say, well, it's not my problem. Oh, really? Who's suffering? Well, I am, but I didn't do it. So I don't care. If you're suffering, it's your problem. Anything that makes you suffer is your problem. And what can you learn from this so you don't do it again? These are the questions about the future. These are the questions about being able to respond. And this is everybody's job. So I'd like to finish and open it up for questions and comments by saying we saw three things today. The first is a question you can always ask, what is the goal? What are we trying to accomplish here? And the goal is not just my goal, but the goal is our goal. What are we trying to do here? That's why vision is so incredibly important for every company. What's the mission that brings us together, that inspires us to do something great beyond the incentive systems? Because incentive systems cannot drive a company properly. Why is this right? How is my proposal helping us? This is the logic of every discussion in the company. Should we go A or should we go B? Well, the only logic is which one of these two is going to help us accomplish our goal or fulfill our mission better. That's all that matters. But very few conversations in the company revert to that level of depth in terms of the discussion. And finally, whatever is going on in the world, what's the best we can do? Let's not talk about what we cannot do or how this is not our responsibility. It's true, you did not create world hunger, you did not create unemployment. But the question is, can you do something about it? And that's what players do. Thank you very much. So we have people here in the room, and I'll ask you please to approach the mic if you have questions or comments, or it doesn't have to be a question. You may want to share something that you discovered. And we also have people remote. I know we have a big group in Chicago that created a book club and are reading my book. I hope I'll go visit you not too far from now and have a chance to discuss all the things that you're reading there. But we can take questions from remote locations and questions from the room or comments. So please approach the mic so everybody can hear you. Thank you.
Hi. So my question was about something you touched on earlier in the talk about the question of centralized versus decentralized decision making. I felt like in the talk I didn't get a closure on that question. Like, what's the solution? Like, what
there is
can
no
we do?
Solution. No. You're absolutely right. That's the whole point. That there is no solution. When the economists were talking about this, the solution is that the best mechanism is the market. So it's decentralized decision making, but with ownership of the subsystem. So the profit motive, it's a very complicated explanation. That's why Hayek got the Nobel Prize and several others afterwards. But it's really it's amazing how the competitive system creates the vector of prices is the dual of the vector of scarcity. So it's the shadow prices will be given by the inverse of the vector of prices, and the individual company can decide what's optimal in terms of resource allocation for society. That's Adam Smith's invisible hand. Mm-hmm. So that's the solution in economics. The problem is that you don't have that in a company. When you go to a large company, that system doesn't work because you don't have internal prices. And even if you had internal prices, you don't have the profit motive in every department. So you can't run a company like you would allow an economy to run itself. There's no integrated strategy in an economy. It just goes. So in a company, that doesn't work. And that's why it's so fascinating. And that's my story of the bear, that what business does is trying to solve an impossible problem, but you don't need to solve the problem completely. You just do the best you can, and life improves as you do better and better on how to create these larger systems. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I think you answered my first question a bit, which was that isn't sort of the goal of managing to create something where the local, optimizing the local substructure is as aligned as possible with the global one?
I used to think that, and it's impossible in a dynamic situation to do that, because the volatility is so high that whenever you create a rigid structure, it's going to be obsolete even before you finish implementing it. So that's what changed my life, to think about this problem and what's the job of a leader. And the job of a leader is create alignment and create culture. I mean, I'm a math guy. I studied mathematics. I did what the guy, John Nash, in A Beautiful Mind did. That was my field, game theory. So when I started seeing Russian agents everywhere, I changed fields. You do get a little paranoid doing game theory. But the answer is there's no way to solve this mathematically. There's no closed form solution. It's about inspiration. It's about leadership. It's about creating the culture where people feel inspired to do the right thing and have the ongoing conversation. In a sense, you create a marketplace of conversations where you don't have prices, but you have people that care for one another, discussing openly what are the trade-offs about one strategy versus the other, and making intelligent decisions. That is the best metaphor I have. It's an intellectual marketplace where people are reasonably deciding how to move the company forward.
Thanks. The other, just very quick, is that I asked you about a year ago if you would consider making a shorter version of your book, and I'm curious either if you've done so or if you'd be amenable to someone else, and I'd volunteer, to summarize this talk as such a shorter version.
I would be delighted. I mean, I haven't done that, but I've done something better. I put a shorter version of the different chapters in influencers. And so if you look at influencers, I have to say I've been humbled, because the first time I posted, in the first 2 hours, more people read that post that have bought my book in its history. So there go 10 years of effort to write the book. This was a one-page thing, and I had 200,000 people read it. It's like, oh my God, what have I been doing? So yes, it's there. It's all there. Thank you. And I'd be happy if anybody wants to summarize and put it there. There's no IP. Everything is open. Feel free. I'd love to share this with people and help you create economic opportunity. So that's my goal. Thank you.
So my question is around what Daniel just pointed out, but at a more specific level. So when you have people at different levels of hierarchy of needs, so if you have people who are surviving versus people at the top who are living. Now, my belief is it's easier to get the people who are living on board with the overall winning strategy or the winning concept, as opposed to people who are surviving in their lives. So do you have some comments on how do you get them on board?
I would have a very serious conversation with the people about what does it mean to really live. So I consider the job, somebody asked Lao Tzu about good men and bad men, and Lao Tzu said, what is a bad man if not a good man's job? So I think the job of a leader is to make sure nobody's surviving and that people are really living, even if they are needing food. But it's possible to live. I don't think that's an economic concept, that you cannot be a full human being if you have some basic needs. We all have those basic needs, and some people struggle, but there's a level of dignity, of depth in fulfillment of those needs that can be managed in a team. And I of course, I agree that there's the need for the leaders, those people who are inspired and are able to inspire others to bring some consciousness to the workplace. That's our job.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just another follow-up question on this. So how do you think this would, so these concepts that you presented, how would they expand to the level of a nation as opposed to just being a company?
The level of responsibility it expands to every individual in the world. But I think there's a discontinuity between a company and a nation. And it's a very profound question, which I'd like to discuss some other time. But essentially, there's a temptation that people have about taking the philosophy of a company to the country, and the moment you do that, you fall into fascism. because a company is not like an economy. An economy is a space of possibilities where everybody can pursue what makes them happy. There's no mission of an economy except to allow people to live better lives. The moment you start doing industrial policy and forcing companies to do one thing and not the other, you start running into a lot of problems that have to do with ethics. So I feel property rights in a company and a business are perfectly appropriate because the owners decide what's the mission and all that. But when you go to an economy, every individual is the owner of his or her life, and nobody else should, in my belief, should tell them what to do. So it's a very deep question. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes.
Thanks for your talk. I guess one of the questions that I have is about constructive disagreement within a company. So even if people are aligned with the vision and are trying to be inspired and compassionate, you're going to disagree.
Yes.
So what have you seen, I guess, either successful patterns in companies, or what can I do in my day job to, on a daily basis?
Yes. That's a lovely question, and it depends on the level of disagreement. So let's say there's a wide agreement about this is the vision we're pursuing. And then you go down and say, what's the means that's most effective, however you want to define effectiveness, to accomplish our mission? At that level, there can be very constructive disagreement. If you don't agree with the mission or you're not interested in the mission, you can always quit. You say, okay, this is not, and it doesn't mean anything bad about the mission. It's just doesn't make my heart sing. I'm more inspired to do something else. If you want to be a doctor, working in IT is not going to make your heart sing, but that doesn't say anything bad about IT. You just choose what defines you as a human being. But then at the instrumental level, you can have constructive disagreement about costs and benefits. Now there, you use the scientific method, logic and evidence. You present why, but it's a logic that's teleologic, because it's why do you think this is most effective to accomplish the goal? The other person will also have reasons, and it may be a decision under uncertainty. If you can agree enough, then maybe you can come to a solution together. If you cannot come to a solution, and this is the most important thing, how do you resolve one of these problems when the uncertainty is wide enough that there's no obvious solution and people can genuinely disagree? Well, that's the beauty of property rights. The question is not what's the right answer, the question is who has the right to make a bet, because it's going to be a bet. And I like to bet with my money. So ultimately, the owner of the money makes the bet. Ultimately, the owner of the company makes the bet. And the owner of the company bets on a management structure that trusts to make those decisions when there cannot be closed form. So when you look up in the hierarchy, your boss, in a sense, is the representative of the owners of the company that's saying, if you cannot agree, this is the person we entrust to make a judgment call. When you look down. So it's perfectly reasonable with your employees to discuss the issue, but if you cannot get to a closed form, not to say, we're going to do what I say because I'm the boss and I'm right. Being the boss doesn't make you right. Being the boss doesn't mean you can say 2 + 2 is 5. But being the boss says, when we cannot agree and we cannot resolve this issue, somebody has to make a bet. Would you allow me to place the bet? Because I've been entrusted with that responsibility. I would say yes, of course. And whoever says no, it's not really working for you. They don't accept your authority or your representation of the authority of the owners of the company. That's an untenable situation. But it's not because the boss is right. It's because after we talked about it, after we share all the reasons, it's a very difficult problem and we don't know how to solve it. So somebody gets to make a decision under uncertainty, and there's a person allocated to make that decision. That's my answer.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Hi, Fred. This question is from Evan Keesley in our New York office, and his question is, what companies do you see outrunning their competitors from the Bear, and what are they doing right?
Well, I'm here because I see LinkedIn running the competition. It's the set of opportunities and the creation of this social network around jobs and around economic opportunity is amazing. So I don't say this because I'm here, but I'm really impressed. I would say, well, Facebook is also doing something very right. Google did something incredibly right. And then the Bear kind of started chewing at their heels, and for a while it was touch and go. Apple did something right. So, I mean, any successful company is solving this problem better than its competitors. Sometimes you get a mutant, like Steve Jobs, that that even though the company as an organization may not be fully aligned, the sheer power of their personality and their ability to create this reality distortion field, as someone called it, is able to integrate the company. But the problem is that that's not sustainable. That never becomes an institution. It just becomes a group of people following another person. But it's very vulnerable, as we all unfortunately know. So I don't have like a set of companies that I would say here, here, here. I can tell you some of my friends. I don't know, John Mackey, Whole Foods. That's another very inspirational leader. His book I totally recommend it. Conscious Capitalism. I work with him and we work together. It's a lovely book. But this is the sense of leadership as inspiration, and the companies that succeed are creating a field where people are magnetized in the right direction. So think of it like that, and that's how the problem can be solved, not with the math, not with the incentives, not with the accounting, but with the culture and the inspiration that people feel. Yes. And we have these two, I guess, Rachel, you're going to finish the round, and then I want to finish on time, so you can't blame me for being stuck in a meeting.
Thank you for coming in and planting the seed to think about what success for LinkedIn means. If I tie a couple of the concepts from your speech today and apply the tag of a victim to a silo and an influencer within an organization to a player,
yes,
it would seem to me that if you rotate your influencers among your silos, you get the benefit of centralized vision and localized success.
Exactly.
Have companies done that? What is
absolutely. That is one of the structure of hierarchy. When a hierarchy is done consciously, it allows people to focus on what they need to focus on, the lower level in the silo, but then the leadership of the silo has a dual membership. So I'm the head, let's say, of finance, but I'm also a member of the leadership team. And when I work with the leadership team, I'm not going to the meeting like people go to Congress saying, I want to bring the bacon to my territory, or my job is to represent my voters in Congress. That is a horrible political mess. The job of the head of engineering is not to represent engineering as, we want to bring more budget to engineer and hire more, and I'm going to protect my people. The members of the leadership team, as you say, the influencers, have to create the global culture, but they also have to look down and say, I am managing this area and I have to focus here. So there is something about the attackers attacking and the defenders defending. In general, that's the way you do your job. However, it's not the only way. So what you say is exactly the answer to the problem. You want to establish a global perspective, but also focus people at the right level. And the higher you go, the broader your membership needs to be, until in the members of the leadership team, what I hope to see, and I actually see it here, is that people are committed to the success of the company, as opposed to other companies where I see people are going there to protect their people. Like, these are my people. If there's a reduction of the workforce, I want to protect my people, and that creates a mess in the company. Thank you.
Hello. You talk about companies being like and their subgroups being like teams on a soccer team, but I was wondering, what are your thoughts, or how would that metaphor translate to something like sales, where it's more like a golf team and everyone has individual goals, and how would you address that?
Very good. So first, sales doesn't exist in isolation unless it's a sales company, but sales is a function in a company. So that would be a sub-team already. The goal is not to sell. The goal is to accomplish the mission in a profitable way. So sales participates in that. But even in a sales organizations, we can take that as a fractal and say, how do you create the right incentives in a sales organization? I would imagine it's a function of the level of interaction of the salespeople. If the salespeople can do their job very individualistically, then commissions are actually quite good. If the sales teams have to work together because they integrate different areas, then I would tend to be more of a global incentive system for salespeople in terms of their budget. But more important than that, I think, is the collective mission that brings everybody together and attracting the people who are aligned to that. I don't think you can it's impossible to solve the problem in the small sales organization, because the sales organization has to be part of something that has integrity to live on its own. It would be like, if you look at the kidneys alone cannot be healthy. The whole body has to be healthy. So of course you cannot have a healthy body without a healthy kidney, but the kidney cannot exist on its own. And for me, a company it's a body. It's like an integrated entity that's going out to the marketplace with a mission to accomplish. Thank you. Yes. We'll close with you, Rachel.
This is a question from the stream from Emmanuel in Chicago, who's helped start this book club that they're doing with your book in Chicago. So how can we manage taking responsibility and not blaming outside factors without looking bad?
Well, how can I manage to answer that question without looking bad? I mean, you ask me a question like that, you're making me look bad. I mean, this is not my fault. Jesus, what a question. Well, I would start by saying looking bad in the eyes of whom? Because you cannot control what other people are going to think of you. So I would change the question and say looking bad in my eyes. And the question is, how can you avoid taking responsibility and be proud of yourself when you look in the mirror? It's the other way around. Who wants to live life as a victim? So when you look in the mirror, what makes you proud? And what makes people proud, I've asked this all over the world, and what makes people proud is not success. Success is contingent. As the Buddha said, if everything goes really, really well, you're going to get old, you're going to get sick, and you're going to die. That's the happy news, you know. You can look forward to that. That's the best of all possible worlds. So, I mean, if you're betting on success, I guarantee you're going to die in defeat. Because the last battle you will lose. We all do. So how is it possible? This was the question of the Buddha. How is it possible to live happy when we know that we're not going to succeed at the end? And I don't know, I can't tell you his answer, but I'll tell you what I found. And that's integrity. It's the integrity to act in alignment with what's dear and valuable to me. And that requires being a player. That requires taking responsibility, not to win, not even to look good, because you cannot make other people like you. I don't know if you're going to look good in the eyes of your manager. I don't teach people how to look good. What I would like to help you do is be proud when you look in the mirror, and I can guarantee that the only way you can do that is by taking ownership of your life, deciding what's the mission that's going to make you proud, and then pursuing it with the most ethical sense you can master. Thank you very much.